Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. Let me first tell you if there are some hiccups here. They released a new version of the software, and in releasing the new version of the software, we have a few things that we don't know. We had to reinstall all the different pieces of panels and all that good stuff. So bear with me. Anyhow, welcome aboard. Bridge MCP says, hi, peeps. Maywood salutes. Hey, Bridge, Egberto Willis, Mike is taking a break. I I sent him a text message, and I didn't get a reply. Not a text message, on Facebook. So I guess he's off of Facebook and didn't see my message. As long as he's doing fine. Did you talk to him at all, or what's going on? Okay, let's see who else is here. We have Maywood. Maywood, yes, all's fine. Ashley's doing fine. She is in her class studying for the boards right now online. So all's going good. Let's see what else here. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I had to install some new software and I hope all the things went through correctly. Tom C, buenas tardes, ¿cómo estás? Y mi amigo de Panamá, saludos a Roberto Lewis. How are you doing, Roberto? Thank you so kindly for being here. Let's see, I sent it to FB. He just said on break. Okay, Norman Reynolds says, estoy aquí también. Reynolds, ¿cómo estás, mi amigo? ¿Cómo estás? Todos mis amigos están aquí hoy. Hey, guys. I have a fairly good interview that I did with Marlon Weems. He was the New York trader on Wall Street. And I'm going to go ahead and, since we don't have our beginning information from a good old Rudnan, I'm going to go ahead and start that interview. It's going to take quite a few time. And then I'll come back and we have a whole lot of other stuff to discuss. If you guys have other things you want to talk about as well, throw it into the feed and we'll get busy and do that. Like I said, things are a bit different. So let's make sure that all continues to work as it should. Let's see, all this Spanish. I'm going to start Gaelic. I would love, you know what? When we start bringing you in live, you're gonna have to come on Bridge and speak some Gaelic for me. I heard some on TV a couple days ago, and it was like that doesn't. It was on a food channel, and I'm like that doesn't sound anywhere close to English at all. You're gonna have to fix up on that Bridge. But I'd love to hear a few things. Mike Cisak says. I would love to have a vacation, but I can't with all the inflation Biden is causing. I interviewed Richard Wolff, an economist who knows all there is to know about not only the American economy, but economies around the world. And it was wonderful to hear him salute and equate what I had to say. Please stop calling it Biden inflation. First of all, if it were Biden inflation, Biden would have a lot of power he doesn't have. I wish Biden had that power to start or stop inflation. He does not. The people you need to blame for inflation are the corporatists because they're doing it for their sole purpose of making a profit for themselves. Please, they have you misinformed, and instead misinformation, that is why you hurt us all with that misinformation. Richard Wolff has never been right on anything economically. Actually, he has been right every single time. Remember, he's the one who told us the reasons why we did not get wage increases but could still have a moving economy. We replaced wages with credit, and if you take a look at the numbers, they correlate perfectly. Sir, read. Don't follow what the right wing are telling you. Remember, they are paid to misinform you. They are paid to make you dumb. Please read appropriately. But anyhow, let's go ahead and start with Mr. Weems, and then we'll take it on the other side thereafter. Come on in, Mr. Weems. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today, I am honored once again. You guys know I love this guy. Why do I love this guy? Because, in as much as we don't agree on all aspects of economics, he has a point of view that I will always listen to. Marlon Weems, aka the Journeyman, a man who spent 30 years in finance, 10 of those on Wall Street's global investment banks, and subsequently hired him to help them decipher developments in the financial and socio-economic landscape. Marlon points out that mainstream news rarely drills down enough to give a true picture of what's happening, let alone what it all means, and henceforth the need for writers like the journeyman Marlon Weems. Welcome to Politics Done Right once again.
Good to be back with you, Egberto.
Yeah, well, today,
I'm becoming a friend of the show.
well, I mean, the first time you appeared on the show, sir, you were a friend of the
That
show.
got
So
me in.
the becoming is not does not compute. Are computes. You are. Okay, let me start it this way. One of the reasons I asked you to come on is that either you said something about capitalism or I said something about capitalism, and I probably objected to something you said, and you probably objected to something I said. I don't know if it's really an objection other than a clarification.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I wanted to, I have been getting very upset at what's been going on. I wrote a piece recently called Insanity, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we have learned how to go into these boom bust cycles, and we've learned how to talk about inflation as if it's real and supply chain as if government has something to do with it, et cetera, et cetera. And it just got me upset. So you see some of the anti-capitalist notions that I've been going through right now. What are your thoughts, first of all, as far as capitalism, not the way you would want it, but the way that we practice it?
Well, I have written about this, and I call it, American capitalism ain't really capitalism.
Hmm.
And I'll just give you the answer to your question is you and I probably are closer in agreement than you might think, but there's some areas that we differ.
Hmm.
So, for example, I'm not against socialism because there's so much of it in our system already. I mean, what's Obamacare? What's Social
Right.
Security? Or, the things that we all collectively share in, like utilities, fire departments, et cetera. The problem that I have with capitalism, and I would say that I'm still a capitalist, not as much as I was when I worked on Wall Street.
Hmm.
So, I jokingly say I'm a recovering capitalist or a reformed capitalist. I still believe in it because the alternatives I don't think are necessarily much better. They all have pluses and minuses, if you will. So I'm not against socialism, like I said. I'm just not sure the problems that we have in capitalism are fixable by going to socialism. So what I mean by that is, um, you know, does that solve equality? I think it probably helps, certainly. But I just think humans, by our nature, are going to grift. We're going to cheat, And so to me, the problem that is really getting you ticked off and frustrated, as well as me, I think isn't so much to do with capitalism as it is the implementation of it. You know, so what I mean by that is any system, for example, that you have where you just don't regulate what people do, you're going to have problems. You're going to have the same. You understand what I mean? So
Yeah.
there was a video, maybe it was one of your shows from, it had to be pretty recent, where you were talking about, well, you played, pardon me, the allergy season down
Yeah,
here in
it,
North
it's
Carolina.
here too, man. I
I,
hear you.
I don't want to blow your ears out with a sneeze. So no, you played a video in one of your episodes of Stephanie Rule, and she was
Right.
talking about what was going on with Goldman and Russia and so on. See, to me, and this is something that I learned working on Wall Street, whatever the rules are, by nature, people are going to, my grandmother had a saying that water will seek its own level. You
She's
know,
right.
people are going to look for the loophole and they're going to exploit it. They'll do that in Sweden, they'll do it in Venezuela, and they'll do it here. So when you leave the door open for Goldman to do what they're doing, it's not like they're cheating because you set it up that way. So, I just think that what we need to do is reform capitalism and make it more progressive. And one of the things that disenchanted me with working on Wall Street was during the financial crisis, seeing firms that had taken capitalism to the nth degree, right? And then when it went wrong, they didn't like capitalism anymore. They needed some socialism.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
and everybody, and we used to joke that, Wall Street is capitalism on the way up and socialism on the way down. So, I guess I'll leave it there. I hope I answered your question.
No, no, I think you did a great job. I mean, I'm gonna define something here and say that I think what you pointed out to me, you want all these regulations in, which I think is a must. And I think once you do all of that, capitalism isn't as capital as it is, as capitalist as it is anymore,
Sure.
right?
Well, I don't
So
really care that
I
I don't
agree.
know. I don't really know that. I don't know that we've ever been 100% capitalist
Right.
because we have, like I said, Wall Street's the last bastion of capitalism till stuff went wrong, and
Hmm.
then it's like, oh, please help us.
Yeah.
I mean, pure
The-
capitalism would mean the chips fall where they may, and you go out of business or not, right?
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way the book version of capitalism is.
Right. There are other aspects of it that are concerning that I want to touch on. But before I touch on that, I just want to ask you another question with regards to bifurcated economies, right? Um, Basically, I think you've said you don't mind it, right? A little bit of all the isms is just fine. Um, I don't go ahead and define myself as like, Berto, you're a socialist because of the connotation that that has. But I
Sure.
have no problem denoting that I am, in fact, a democratic socialist in the same similar view as places like Denmark or Sweden or other places like that.
Hmm.
That we have no problem thinking that they're somehow going to turn into a red China or something like that, right? But um, I think a bifurcated economy is what we need, right? I think essential services to humanity, energy,
Hmm.
energy,
Healthcare.
healthcare, and a few other things should fall under the purview of we the people, the government. And
They
what's
should be
interesting,
utilities, is
they
what you're
should
saying, right?
exactly. You gave it the economic name. They should be utilities. Now, interestingly, I think also the arguments that many capitalists would make that well, you throw healthcare into the government arena, you no longer get innovation. You throw energy into the public domain, you no longer get innovation. It irks me that even our media, good media, doesn't set the record straight that
Right.
actually tells the reality that most innovation occur with government funding
Sure it
because
does.
capitalist companies don't take unnecessary risk. That's why they also buy other companies. They find a little startup that does something and they prove its value. That big company is going to buy it because it's already been proven. The fallacy that supporting these large corporations and making sure that we continuously have policies to support them over and over again, to me seems disingenuous in that most of the development, most of the intellect, most of all these things either come from universities or grants. I mean, I don't know of any corporation who has original design. They may have permutations thereof, but if you could tell me what, I mean, you go into deep oil drilling, you go into what NASA has done to allow for deep oil drilling, etc. It was all government paid for.
Mm. So I agree with you to an extent, which
Okay,
probably is no surprise.
right?
um, I- so you're absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, I did not realize um, just how true what you just said is until a few years ago. I, for a year, was the head of business development for a biotechnology accelerator that was under the well, it existed or and still does within the University of North Carolina
Hmm.
system in Wilmington.
Hmm.
And so, we had a totally separate campus of buildings and, labs and all this stuff, which I did not touch any of that. I was there uh, basically to attract these little companies that, so you have professors within the university that are working on different projects. And so we basically housed those guys and gave them a place to, to develop and incubate and so on. But during that time, of course, I saw firsthand how, how different drugs get developed in the university. And universities, 9 times out of 10, don't reap near the benefit.
Exactly.
Because they're not really set up to do that. They're really set up to spin it out, And so, yeah, you're right. Now, I would say in healthcare, that's certainly true. But when I think of innovation, and that's the argument for capitalism,
right,
or the argument against less capitalism, let's say,
right,
is that you stifle innovation, which I tend to think that's true to an extent. Now, I may be off, but you give me, I take the example of Apple.
I'm glad you used that example. Yeah,
that's a car. I mean, that's something that started in a garage. Now I'm sure at some point the government played a role, because certainly if you're talking smartphones, sooner or later you have to ride on the government infrastructure. But I would say that the idea germinated with some individuals that just sort of built a technology themselves that, changed the landscape. I'm sorry, you probably have some thoughts on that. But.
Yeah, let me interject a bit there, because I mean, I don't want to take away anything from Steve Jobs. Steve
Sure.
Jobs is I consider him more an artist than an intellect, right? In other words, he created a beautiful computer and so forth. Wozniak was sort of the brainiac. And as in everything that occurs in capitalism, the brainiac somehow gets the back door, Steve
Sure.
Jobs was always the guy that everybody could see was a cute guy,
Well, he was very good at the storytelling part of it, the marketing.
Exactly. But then we go to the core, right? The pen or the mouse and the keyboard, and everybody look at the Apple interface as being, wow, Steve Jobs' creation. Not realizing that Xerox back in the olden days, with government intervention and support and all of that, did this. So yeah, the great innovators aren't necessarily the people who reap the profits from it. As an example as well, we see Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and all these guys who have billions in stocks in these companies, but the actual innovators, the people who are the engineers, the physicists, and all of these guys that aren't Steve Jobs and these other guys, they may have their stock options and make a few more bucks than the average American citizen, but they are not the one that capitalism allows to flourish. In other words, Steve Jobs, and let's even look at Bezos. They take my books are sold through Amazon. Come on, and I mean,
I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, my books are sold through Amazon, and interestingly, my brother, it doesn't irk me that he makes a piece off of my stuff. It irks me that everything, a piece of it belongs to him, and there is no, because of a flaw, I think, in the system, he has not earned that. So there's a distinct disconnect between a person's worth and what capitalism allows that person to be worth. You follow what I'm saying?
I do, absolutely. And what I would say is this. I think your argument is not so much with capitalism, it's against the way we do capitalism in America. So, for example,
yes,
what you really, I think, would prefer is, and here's the problem. Corporate America and the model that everybody, that's the prevailing model or way of thinking about how to distribute wealth, is a shareholder. You're focused on the shareholder. You're not focused on stakeholders. Workers would be stakeholders. You see? So I think maybe I think maybe Germany might be a good example. You
Yes.
know, the I remember a few years back when they were I can't remember. I think it was in Tennessee. They were
Yes.
talking about building a plant there, and
Right.
of course, I forget the senator that was still in
I know,
office
I
at the
remember exactly
time,
who you're talking about. Yes.
but yeah, he got in the middle of it because and the folks at Volkswagen were saying we got no problem with
With a union.
somebody representing the union being on the board because that's the
Right.
way they do it there. So they have a say, their interests are represented, but we're so wedded to the idea that the only people who should benefit are the people who own shares, as
Right.
opposed to and it's to me that's a reflection of something political, maybe not so much capitalism in and of itself, because you could certainly do it differently.
Hmm.
So that's what I would say. And as far as Bezos goes, you saw, I think my most recent piece that I wrote is the title is something like um, the myth or the
Actually, I have it
fiction
right
of
here.
the self-made billionaire.
The fiction of the self. I haven't read it because I just went into Twitter and saw the message here, but I got to go find it. Is it on Medium or Substack or where is it
It's
at?
it's on both. It's on both.
Okay.
You can go to Medium, and that's probably the easiest one. But
Well,
um,
let me
but
just let you know. Let me let you
sure,
everybody know beforehand. I'm a paid member. Of Medium, so anytime I read your stuff, you get paid. Just saying.
yeah, that's good old capitalism, man.
But I
But
look at that. I look at that as I get value. I get value. You get
sure,
value, right?
and
My
and if my stuff is substandard, nobody's going to read it,
Nobody's going to read it, right?
and
And
I'm
that's the
I'm
whole.
fine with that.
But and I'm glad that you just said that, Brother Weems, because here is what gets me. The value that Bezos was able to capital. I don't know if I ever told you the story. When I just started my business, I think back in the late 80s, early 90s,
Hmm.
I wrote software. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I wrote software and I created this thing that was just online. It was when the internet was just coming out, new stuff.
Hmm.
And I was creating a shopping cart for the web. I had to
Okay.
can the idea because of what I was when I did a patent search just for the somebody suggested I do it or something like that. Jeff Bezos patented one click. So anybody who tried to
Okay.
implement a cart in that fashion, one click, something that he probably doesn't even know to write himself as an electrical engineer, which is what he
Sure.
is, right? So he patented that, and by holding folks back on carts and all those things, Bezos took over the market. A lot of people don't know that story, right?
No,
And
it's very similar to Facebook buying up
yes,
all the little, the thumbs up thing was
right,
Friendster, I think it was,
yes, yes.
and they just bought that up, and then they bought WhatsApp, they bought Instagram,
So
and in my opinion, screwed them all up. But that's
yeah,
yeah. I mean, so but again, that is back to my little. I don't think it's a theory. It's just my observation
hmm
that people do what the market, the government, they do what we let them get away with.
oh,
So
and that's
so
why I do what I do because I'm
so
trying to enlighten people not to do that. But go ahead, yes,
yeah, well, so um, we're in a situation now where you've basically got, was it Teddy Roosevelt was the trust buster, right?
yes, yes,
I mean, because that's what we got now. We've got,
yes.
um, see, capitalism's supposed to be all about competition too.
Hmm.
Innovation, competition, free enterprise, free market. We don't do that. I mean, think about it. I think the top, I want to say, if you look at the poultry market or the meat,
Yeah,
you got Smithfield, Tyson, and
yeah,
what's the other, JBL. It's
right.
like four people that got
Yes,
40% of the market.
actually more.
That you're supposed to
Yeah,
break that up, but we
yeah,
don't do it.
right.
You know, um, we see. You mentioned Elon Musk a minute ago. Uh, that's the guy that drives me crazy. And look, of course, he's a smart guy. He's probably a genius. All this stuff can be true, but the government has propped this guy for years. I mean, one contract after another. So all I'm saying is, are are there not maybe 3 or 4 other guys? Is there not a woman that maybe some that could also have gotten some of that? You
Let me
know,
tell
I don't
you,
know.
let me no, it's I think you do know, sir. Let me just say something that I feel, okay? I've met you recently and I've spoken to you and I consider you a very, very smart person. I have also, read a whole lot about Steve Jobs. I read a whole lot about Bezos, read a whole lot about Elon Musk and all these guys. And in America, it seems like if you learn the rules of capitalism, it is unnecessary to be all that smart. Of course, Donald Trump is the epitome of that, right? Okay. But
Sorry,
what,
yeah,
what the reason I'm saying that is that I look at what Bezos did. I could have done it. I look at
sure.
what Bill Gates did. I know hundreds of my engineering brothers who could have done that. What they didn't have were two things: capital
Yep.
and capitalist know-how. And it's amazing that both capital and capitalist know-how in America or trumps
I would
everything.
say I would add on to that, and this may be a subset of that capitalist know-how.
Uh-huh.
It's access. And see, as
That's a better word, sir. That's a better word. Yes, you're right.
well,
Yes.
and let me, if I can just kind of, so what I write about is what, it's not unique to me, but it's just my observation is that there is an intersection between, the economy, politics, and at least in my estimation, let's call it racism.
Uh-huh.
And so, for example, had you been just as smart as Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, you pick, your blackness would have prevented you, um, statistically. Certainly there are some black people that have excelled. You got Bob Johnson, you got
Yeah.
different folks, you got Oprah. But what I'm saying is the system is built in such a way to elevate the Bezoses and to, keep
I
the,
want to
other
I want to
folks down.
move I want to move your words a step further. And I mean this from the depths of my heart, and I am not saying this otherwise. I think you are and I am no less smart than those people that you've mentioned. And I'm not even saying that
Sure.
to be cocky. I'm not
No,
saying that
no.
to say of anything. I'm just
It
saying
is,
what
yeah, yeah, I
what
agree
you
with
and
you.
I know. Uh, Technically speaking, what I know. Okay, I'm not sure, but I don't know if you're an engineer or not. But I know
I am
you're
not.
a fine. But I know you're a finance guy who knows how the system operates. I know that. So what I'm saying is, in each of our domains, I don't think any of these guys. And by the way, I have an audience at Politics Done Right, and
Sure.
most of the people in my audience, uh, I consider those people, and when I tell them this, I sometimes think, do they think I'm just trying to butter them up? I'm not. And the reason why is, when the places that I've worked for NASA, I've worked in the oil industry, I've worked in all these domains, and I've rubbed shoulders with all these people from Harvard, Princeton, all these guys, right? And what was amazing to me was the aura matching the deeds. The aura never matched the deeds. And that word that you corrected me on, Marlon, when you said you would put it a different way, access. That's what we're talking about there.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what we're
I'll give you
talking
an
about.
example just to your point. So I worked on Wall Street for 13 years.
Hmm.
Um, I I guess the last 5 years I ran an algorithmic trading operation. So
Hmm.
you hear about program trades and all the
Right.
complicated stuff. So that's what we did, quantitative trading, for some of the biggest players that exist, biggest pension funds, biggest hedge funds, the whole thing. And then, of course, when we had the financial crisis, that kind of rejiggered everything, So I left New York. Sometimes, circumstances make the decision for you.
Yes, for you, right.
But we had talked about at that point, it's kind of like playing football when you know it's time.
Right.
And my kids were getting in age to a place where we wanted a little different lifestyle. So I'm from Arkansas. I didn't want to go back that far south. At the time, I thought that I was.
But Arkansas is beautiful, sir.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful. I've still got family there, but
yeah,
having come from New York, New Jersey, that was just too much of an unwind for me.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, I've run trading operations on Wall Street. I shouldn't have any trouble, finding a spot in Charlotte, which is a money center.
Right.
Certainly Raleigh, dude. I could barely get interviews.
Right.
And look, I had a trifecta going. I mean, I'm Black, and age was probably another factor.
Right.
And I would hear that I was overqualified.
Right.
And what that meant
well, that's a magic word. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who's hiring is looking at me as potentially coming in, taking his job.
Right.
So all those factors, and who's to say which one is the most, but technology works both ways. So I started to observe when, my people are hitting my resume and there's interest. And then I noticed they've gone to LinkedIn and they see my picture.
Right. Right.
Then suddenly,
right.
Well, we don't know.
Right.
We're already looking at some people, etc.
Right.
And so the thing about capitalism, I guess, is that I just made the decision. Okay, I'm going to take what I know and do something else with it. And you have that flexibility. And I guess one of the beautiful things now is how information is so democratized.
Right.
That what we're doing right now, years ago, say 30, 40 years ago, we had to be working at a TV station to do this.
Do it, yeah.
Exactly. Someone had to allow us
to do it. Now we naturally get, for people, and this is what I find, and I'm honored. I just say this, I'm honored. I have a small audience, but I'm honored to have an audience. And when I say small, small is relative, right? But I mean, interestingly, what I've noticed is when you come across as honest, whether it is somebody who believes that you're full of it because you're completely anti-capitalist in the way it works, once you get that respect, doesn't matter who the person is. I think you've articulated that several times before with some of the people that follow your work, including myself. I follow your work. So I mean, I think that is important. And to your point, the democratization that technology has allowed gives us this platform. But because we don't own enough of this platform, it can be taken away.
Sure. Yeah. That's always
and that's where the capitalism portion of what I talk about, because I know for a fact that many of my stuff gets throttled on the internet because of certain subjects that I cover, right? Capitalism, one of the major subjects. And I think what's going to be important is, as you said earlier, is that we're going to have things like regulations that prevent them, that treats this, what we are on, as a utility of really truly free expression, as opposed to something these private entities control and can decide who will have the honor of being elevated. Because when we talk about capitalism, when I talk about it, when I preach about it, I talk about it being a system where you have to be invited into it. And I'm not pure, you're not pure. I've had stocks, I've had bonds, I've had these different instruments, these different capitalist instruments. But the fact of the matter is, ultimately, I think we have to find some different mode of operation, because two things, and then we're going to have to I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, because you and I can talk forever. I just looked at the time and realized that we can
Sure.
talk forever. But I think we're going to have to put some limits here, because we can't have the 1% of the population growing at 10% a year, the 5% of the population growing at 7% of the year, and it's a mathematical impossibility to continue those things. Likewise, we can't expect that the oil that's found on public lands should only be given to just a few people who decided to own shares. Another concept, and then I'm done. What gets to me is that, and I said it in my past before, whenever I say I let my money work for me, it's nothing more than saying I'm a good abstracted slave owner. And with that, I ask you, sir, to give us a closing of our show with a free form discussion of capitalism.
I don't, as I said earlier, I don't disagree with much of what you said. I think perhaps our only difference is the how to fix it. Is it, see, I don't see a world in which Twitter or YouTube become utilities. And I think that's more of a constitutional issue than anything. But at the same time, see, and man, I hate using this, the slippery slope thing. So if you can't regulate who has access to a YouTube or a Twitter, then you have conspiracy theorists and you have Russian bots all over the place spitting out false information. So I don't think either of us want that.
No,
but
no.
At the same time, what should happen is a politics done right, or a journeyman should have just as much ability to rise up the ladder as I don't know, if you go on Facebook, you see the top the top groups on Facebook, and they're pretty much all very far right, leaning, et cetera, because that's how Facebook gets paid.
Right.
So I don't know exactly. Well, I do know it's regulatory. That's the thing. But those kinds of regulations seem not to succeed because the people who talk the loudest say that's socialism. And so what we really need, just to sum up, I think what we really need is better representation, because the people who don't want this do a much better job of marketing and screaming loud and so forth, as opposed, and look, certainly there are people on the left that do a good job, but I think by and large, that side of the fence does a relatively poor job messaging and telling people what you're saying and what we're talking about. So, maybe we should just keep talking, I guess, right?
Actually, you know what? That's how I was going to close. I was going to say, first of all, anytime I talk to you, well, when I talk to good folk, I always try to learn something. So I always learn from these conversations. From everybody that I interview, from my audience, I make sure to learn something. So first of all, thank you for appearing here and bringing that perspective. Secondly, we are going to do this more often if you're willing to do so, because I think
absolutely
later on we'll probably make it a little bit more topical, so that we have a specific topic. But I just want to thank you for being here on Politics Done Right again, and thank you for sharing my audience your thoughts. I think they've learned quite a bit of what goes on here in America. So, Mr. Marlon Weems, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
My pleasure.
We spend a lot of... As host of Politics Done Right, a progressive radio media show on Pacifica Network's KPFT 90.1 FM Houston that engages all ideologies, I found that our political angst isn't mostly ideological. There is a well-designed effort by many in power to control us. If we are at each other's throats, we are less likely to demand our economic and local wishes. In that light, I wrote 3 books. I wrote the first one titled, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, to describe the entire economy in a manner we can all understand. It highlights why it was designed to pilfer most as it empowers a few, the chosen. The second book, titled, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, take it to the next level. After understanding how the system pilfers, it is incumbent that we can speak to our peers to empower a change. The third book, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, gives us a place to land. After learning about our economy that is dysfunctional for most and learning how to engage the other side, we point out what would make an economy that works for all. Each book stands on its own, but together they provide the full picture. Please consider getting one or more. You will undoubtedly learn, be entertained, and help us continue the mission with our blogs, articles, videos, and books. I'm Egberto Willies, as host of
The reason that occurred is I had the monitor on. Again, like I said, folks, we're setting up this new stuff, and it's we don't have all the kinks out of the new setup that they have yet. We hope to get that out. I think I can actually put it on now because Bridge wanted me to show this, and there it is. Bridge, folks, get our cup. Our cup is on the screen right now. I'll put the link to the cup on the screen in a little bit, but please support us as best you can. You can get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. Politicsdoneright.com. Let's see, how do I get that in here? All right, come on now. Like I said, folks, there are a few little kinks here and there that we're trying to recover from. There you go, Politics Done Right. Well, I thought that would do it. There you go, /books. You can also support us by going to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. It'll put it in there. Bingo. You can support us at politicsandright.com/YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, why don't you click that join button and become a part of our PDR posse on YouTube? We'd love to have you. And actually, we also need to keep this going forward. So that's what it's all about. And lastly, but not least, the best way is always going to be PayPal. politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. And maybe it'll go. There we go. So please consider supporting us. You can visit our store. Our store, we have a lot of new products at the store. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/store. Where are you, store? There you go. I don't know why it takes so long to copy paste in there. And lastly, but not least, I'll give you a direct link to the cup as instructed by the one and only Breach MCP. So here is the link to the cup. It's coming. There you go. All right. Anyhow, folks, let me go ahead and let's go through this list of items that you guys have here. It looks like I should be able to open that window a bit larger now that we've solved the problem. It looks like they've solved the problem. Well, I can't get it open any wider right now. But anyhow, let's go ahead and pull down these different items that you have here. What we can. Smart guy, thanks. Bridge MCP says. Carl Cox says, Amen. Chuck Pinaccio. What did Chuck Pinaccio? I better welcome everybody. Tom C, welcome aboard. Maid Wood, welcome aboard. Carl Cox, welcome aboard. Bridge MCP, welcome aboard. Who else am I missing? Roberto Luis, Mike Cisak, E2247. How you doing, my brother? Bridge MCP. I'm going through the list and trying to not repeat too many times. You know how the mind works. Paul Fleming, the ATL, welcome aboard. Carl Cox, May Wood, I think I got you already, both you and Carl Cox. I saw a couple of new people in here. Let's see. Anyhow, great. Let me go ahead and I'm going to take the questions from the bottom up. Alistair Waters. How you doing, my dear Alistair? Yeah, I interviewed Professor Richard Wolff yesterday. And anytime Professor Wolff and I get on the line, it kind of gets long. So I said, I looked at him and he finally said, you know what, Egberto, you can have me on any number of times because there's always material to cover. We covered a lot of material on with Dr. Wolf, and he had a piece on inflation that I think Mike Cisak would do well to listen to. What I'm doing is I'm breaking that piece out by itself this weekend to place, but it's going to be a part of the show on Monday as well. But I want to break this piece out because people simply don't understand how inflation works. They think they can blame the government, and most of the times it's not the government, and it's math, right? If if you claim, Lawrence Sims, welcome aboard, welcome aboard. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. Let me tell you how to do it, guys. If you claim that inflation is caused by shortages and demand stays the same, and you are able to meet the demand, no shortages in other words, and you also have record profits from companies who were not, in other words, they're making more than they were before. At that point in time, it's not what you would call it is not systemic inflation, right? It is actually price gouging. It is actually those, or it's not organic inflation, is I guess what I want to say. It is that those people who have pricing power decide that we want to make more money for our shareholders. And since we can increase the price because we have wages that have gone up. And let me explain this to you because it's so macabre. Our corporations were forced to raise wages because finally Americans said, you know what, I'm sitting my butt down. And the truth of the matter is, the administration gave people a break. That lot of that money from the stimulus that was going through gave people the opportunity to sit back and think about their lives, think about how to be happier. Did we come to this earth to work for a bunch of plutocrats and make a few people rich? Or should this have been a community where everybody worked for sustenance but also had a life and was not abused? Isn't that what it should always be about? So the Biden administration, when a lot of people made the claim and said a lot of people are paid not to work, to some extent, small extent, that was true. It's not that they were paid not to work, it's that they got a chance to breathe. They had a chance to breathe and reevaluate. They got a chance to see that they could make things work and they didn't have to be spending a whole lot of money on gasoline to go to work, on restaurants while they're outside of the home. They realized they could live a simpler life and be just as happy, if not more happy. The plutocracy doesn't want that opportunity. That is why Manchin and Sinema and all the Republicans came out against Build Back Better. You see, it was going to be telling Americans, you matter. You matter, and we can actually have a better life. And if corporations really want you in that office, they will be willing to make it worth your while, pay you. Doesn't compute. The corporatocracy hates that because, people, for those who get upset when I call it antiseptic slavery, that's what it is. Marlon Weems, how you doing? Happy Friday. We just got through playing you, my brother. We just got through playing you. Thank you for that wonderful conversation that we had yesterday. You are a gem, brother Weems, and you always make me think. So thank you. But yeah, folks, so that's what the plutocracy sees, right? They see the liberation of their enslaved. It is, and once you realize that, and once we start working together, I'm on a particular board. It's a public board. And all of us think about the same things, what we want for America. But we sit down among ourselves and we have petty fights. Makes no sense, right? We sit down and we discuss issues that, oh, you hurt my feelings here, you hurt my, and, so I finally made it onto this board now, and I'm like, I am not going there. I'm gonna love on everybody. They claim we have all these factions. And what I say is I'm not going to be factionalized, right? In fact, if you read the if you read the Federalist Papers, you'll see that I don't remember who is it that wrote it. I think it was I don't remember who wrote that paper that talked about the factionalization of America. It was on the Federalist Papers, right? So what I'm trying to say, folks, is the following, and I have to get out of here early because I have another interview with actually an author who just wrote a book, and that interview starts at 5, so I'm going to have to leave here about 3 minutes early. But what I want to leave this weekend by telling you is the following. All of us in this room, all of us that listen to these podcasts, whether live or later on, right? I want you guys to know something. There is no point in us fighting each other. Mike Cisak is always here. I love you, brother. I really do. I was going to say I think you're misinformed, but it's not that I think you're misinformed. I absolutely know as a matter of fact that you're misinformed. Chuck Panaccio, welcome aboard. James Madison, thank you very much. I love Chuck Panaccio. James Madison, that's the one who wrote about factionalization. And so what I want to tell you guys is the following. I am not going to get into hate fights with none of you. I'm going to love every single one of you. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Because that's what the plutocracy needs. They need us to be talking about the little stuff and fighting about the little stuff as they rob us blind, as they take us to the cleaners. I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm going to be here telling you this stuff. I'm going to leave or hold my ire for the plutocracy, for the corporatocracy. You can call me, name me, shout at me, do whatever you want. I won't be party to hating you. I will be a party to always telling you, please come back. I don't care what you got to say. Come back. Listen, share. I'll try to continue bringing good folks. Alistair Waters, welcome aboard. I got to get out of here though, folks. So I don't know. I may do a few stuff on TikTok to play around this weekend. And I'm going to ask you guys to go to TikTok and follow me. All of you that are listening here, please go to TikTok and follow me. I'm going to be playing around with that platform to see if I can find a format in which I can operate under there as well. I got to get out of here. Really love you. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I am going to end this baby. I am what? Out!
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.